Yo, my beats, they are hard.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the BCSN SportsWrap. Brian Fulford here, joined by my man AD Drew, and we are coming up on week number 11. This is your week number 11 preview of the BCSN SportsWrap. AD, how are we feeling today?
Oh, it's just a busy week, Brian. You know, football's winding down, basketball is starting, pulling the hoodies out because the weather has changed and temperatures changed, leaves falling off the tree. Don't you just love it, brother?
Where are you at? I don't get that kind of tree foliage change, cooler weather. That doesn't happen down here in Florida.
Yeah, I'm in South Georgia, so I guess I'm just far enough north where I get to experience that, but I only want to experience it to a certain level because I don't want to have to pull out the boots and shovel snow, Brian.
Yeah, well, good for you. My folks up in Indianapolis told me it was something like 20 or 30 degrees, so I was like, yeah.
Yeah, is that why you stayed in the South after you graduated school just like I did, Brian?
Oh, it's a big reason why I stayed in the South. Although, I'm not going to lie, it's late October, early November. I'd like to not be sweating in 90-degree weather, which I believe when I got in my car later this afternoon or earlier this afternoon, it was like 89, 90 degrees. And I'm just like, why am I sweating on November? What day is it? 7th? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But,
this is that time of the year, Brian, where you have to turn the heat on in the morning, the AC in the afternoon, and then the heat again at night in your car.
Again, everywhere but in Central and probably South Florida, where my AC has yet to come. It stays on, although it's at a steady 76 degrees. So, all right. So as we get into week number 11, we've got a few news and notes, things to get to this upcoming weekend, as well as we're going to talk about our latest BCSN Top 5 poll in the Division I and what we call the under Division I levels, as well as it's a big weekend upcoming in the Division II football world, as primarily for the HBCU schools in the CIAA and the SIC. It's pretty much a close to the regular season for those schools because next week both the CIAA and the SIC host their conference championship games, and we essentially only have one team that has booked their reservation for those championship games, and that's the Bowie State Bulldogs, who clinched the CIAA Northern Division for the second consecutive year. They did that last week. Of course, they are 9-0 on the year, unbeaten, untied right now, sitting at number 1 over in our they've been number 1 pretty much since our poll came out. But we do have 3 other games or 3 other teams to figure out. So that's a little bit what we'll be talking about as we get into our feature games. And then we've also got some interesting SWAC matchups. Although in the SWAC you've got Alcorn State and Southern leading the East and West divisions, it's not set in stone that either of those teams, there's still, including this weekend, there's still about 3 to 4 weekends left of football left in the SWAC. So, and there's some interesting matchups upcoming down the road. So nothing is set in stone, and a win or a loss by certain teams can definitely factor into who will be playing in the SWAC championship game. And then, of course, in the MEAC, look, let's be real. This is actually a bye week, really, and I say that in terms of the major four teams, or the primary three teams, if you want to call it that way, who have some sort of say in how this MEAC championship is going to be decided, are really either off or playing teams that they should beat by more than 2 touchdowns. The only game that we're spotlighting that probably has a little bit of interest and may factor into this whole thing is Norfolk State traveling to North Carolina Central for North Carolina Central's homecoming, and that's primarily because of North Carolina Central. So if you're let's set up the, of course, if you're just joining us for the first time, and as you listen to this podcast, hopefully you'll find it pleasing and entertaining enough that you'll share it. But we want to make sure you go to our Twitter and Instagram and our Facebook pages. You can find all of them by using at MyBCSN1. That's the number 1. That's where you can find us on all 3 platforms. Of course, our BCSN SportsWrap show has a Facebook page of its own. And then, of course, on our web page, mybcsn.net. That's where you can find us. You can find great articles like AD's article about the Division II playoffs, week number 2, which we'll get into here shortly, as well as you can find some of our shows. And, of course, both AD and I had conversations with some interesting people. AD had a great conversation with Dr. Alvin Parker, the head coach of Virginia Union, and I had a conversation with Mo Carter, who is the sports director, anchor, former Southern football player, who is the sports director in Huntsville, Alabama, where they primarily, obviously that's the home city for Alabama A&M, but as a media member, it's one of those conversations I thought would kind of expose our audience to the people who cover black college athletics, because I know a lot of times we talk to the coaches, but I trying to give us that picture, that big picture look into what's going on. Any give the people a little setup, AD. What was one of the main 1 or 2 takeaways from the interview with Dr. Parker that you had?
We really had a kind of in-depth discussion about the playoffs and the different scenarios, and just kind of how everything's evolved over the last year with the change of playoffs. In the past, it's pretty much been set. 1 gets a bye, 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. But this year, they've changed it. 1 still gets the bye, 2, 3, and 4 at home, but 5, 6, and 7 are at-large teams, which means they could go play anybody. There are a couple of different factors that go into who plays who, but one of the main things that the NCAA was trying to eliminate were conference rematches. And without giving away too much of the interview, Bowie State sits at number 3 right now, Brian. The winner of the Virginia Union game will most likely wind up finishing number 6 in the regional polls. Under last year's rules, that would mean Bowie State and the winning Virginia school, would meet in the first round of the playoffs with an elimination game to one of our HBCUs. Well, we just saw that matchup, depending on which one, either 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, before which one of those Virginia schools. So by going to the where you have the at-large teams, you eliminate that matchup, and the CIAA is not the only conference that could possibly happen to. But for our sake of discussion here with HBCU football, that's one that doesn't that you don't want to see in the first round. If I want to see my 2 CIAA teams facing each other, my 2 HBCUs facing each other, I want to see it in the regional championship. What about you, Brian?
I mean, in terms of the matchups, my biggest thing is I just want to see. I want to see a little more transparency with how these votes are being placed, because I've already told you I've expressed my concern with the fact that potentially an SIAC team like a Miles, who potentially could finish 9-2, could be left off. I think that's a travesty, personally. So that's my biggest thing. And you know what? If they end up playing in the first round, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I mean, it is what it is, and
But just not with the CIAA, but you could have SAC versus SAC, Gulf South versus Gulf South in the first round, and most of these teams have already played each other at some point in time in their regular conference season. So,
well, you can't avoid that. I don't think you can avoid that when you have we have 7 spots, or really 6 spots in the opening round, and then you have 4. Possibly, if you give the best team and the best conference a bye, that leaves 3 other. There's just naturally going to be somebody that's going to have to play somebody they've already played. I don't know how you avoid that, really. I mean,
if everything plays out, it will be avoided. What could be an interesting matchup, once again, without previewing too much, and this was not a part of the conversation with Dr. Parker, but this was something that I brought up in my article that I wrote, and you can check out that article at www.mybcsn.net. Is you could potentially have the SIAC champion traveling to Bowie, Maryland, to play Bowie State in the first round of the playoffs, and that would be a matchup I would love to see. And I guarantee you, the NCAA, if they're trying to make money at the gate, they would put that matchup in. And we'll go ahead and get into it. The Virginia school that wins will probably be traveling to North Carolina to play either Wingate or Carson-Newman, which one of those teams either winds up at number 4. Another reason Albany State a natural rival would be Albany State, Valdosta State, because both of those teams could be in, assuming Albany State wins the SIAC. Except Albany State played Valdosta State week 1 of the season. Also, another matchup you can't see again is Virginia Union against Lenore Ryan, because they played each other week 2 of the season. So Super Region 2 is going to be real tough and real interesting to see how they seed some of these teams out. And, of course, you don't want two teams from the same conference, especially like with the CIAA same side of the conference, which that's the only way it would be to get in. One thing you do have to go ahead.
No. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
I was going to say one thing we do have to avoid is Bowie State cannot lose this game this weekend, Brian, for 2 reasons. A, they've lost the home game. Bowie State's in the playoffs, win or lose, but they want that first game at home. That's number 1. Number 2, if Bowie State loses the game this weekend and or the CIAA championship game, not only will they lose a home game, but they could potentially knock out the Virginia school.
Well, look, again, Bowie playing Elizabeth City State, and, with all respect to Elizabeth City State, who has played who was it they upset a couple of weeks ago, didn't they? Was it
they beat St. Aug, and
well, that's not an upset, but
they beat St. Aug and Chowan. Those are the 2 victories.
Okay, maybe it was I'm thinking St. Aug who beat Fayetteville State.
They beat St. Aug after the coaching change, though.
Oh, okay. Well, Anyway, Bowie State has no business losing to Elizabeth City State. That's all I got to say. So let's do this. Well, while we're talking about the polls and the rankings, I guess we'd have to mention West Virginia State because they are over in Super Region 1. And obviously they were, when the first poll came out, they were number 5. They lost to Charleston, and they dropped to number 8. And what you think that they still have a shot, even though they still have 2 tough conference opponents. Well, I should say 1 tough conference opponent because I think they play a winless team this upcoming weekend. And then the following week, though, they play top-seeded in their conference, Notre Dame of Ohio. And that's going to be a tough contest.
And I believe Notre Dame is number 3 in the region, Brian. Number 2 or number 3 in the region.
Right. Yeah, they're up there. They're nationally ranked. I think
around.
They're ranked about 12th in the nation, if I saw correct.
Yeah, and they've bounced around from their 2 to 3, 1, 2, 3 slot. But they have to beat Notre Dame of Ohio. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
That's
Not only will
task.
that is a tall task. You know, the loss to Frostburg at the buzzer, literally, is the loss that hurts them more than anything else. They were blown out last week. They really were never in the game, it seems.
Right.
Like.
And they had just scored in that Frostburg game. They had scored to take the lead with about a minute to go, and then, just turned around and gave
couldn't
up.
Finish.
Yeah, couldn't finish it. All they had to do was just hold them off and keep them out of the end zone, and they couldn't do that. Yeah.
Yes. So, but
yeah, you think they can if okay? So you say they have to win out, but what if they go 1-1 these last 2 weeks? Are they in or out?
Home. They're sitting
at home. Okay.
They're sitting at home. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you want to jump over to the SIAC, Brian, we can, or we could wait till we get to that conference.
Let's wait till we get into the conference to talk about them.
Okay.
Let's come to that later. I guess my final thought on West Virginia State would be, regardless of what happens, they're sitting at already. They've had a great season, the best season under Coach John Pennington. They're offensively one of the more exciting stories, or one of the exciting teams to follow. I mean, every week it seems like they have somebody, whether it's been a running back or a couple of receivers or the quarterback, somebody has been putting up major numbers in terms of the HBCU, among HBCU teams. And so they have really gotten some notice this year, and I don't know, I haven't really paid attention to who's coming back next year, but this is a team that if they can find a way to tighten up on defense just a little bit, they're going to be a title contender, or at least a strong conference title contender next year.
Yeah, they problem is their key players, that being their quarterback, their receiver, and their top 2 defensive players. The top 2 receivers, the quarterback, and the top 2 defensive players are all seniors this year, Brian. So,
well, there goes that right there.
Yeah. So, it's gonna be a tall task for Coach Pennington over there at West Virginia State.
Okay, let's transition, and since we were talking about polls and rankings, let's talk about our top 5 under D1 and our top 5 Division I polls heading into week number 11. And so we're going to start 5-1 on the under D1 side. Again, this is our poll, our rankings based on the NAIA and Division II schools. And pretty much the D2 side of our polls has shuffled over these last few weeks. I mean, we had a week where all 4 teams lost, or 4 of the 5 teams lost. We've had weeks where 3 of the 5 lost. We've had weeks where 3 new teams came in, and then just as easily those 3 teams lost and they're back out. So it's really been fluid in our poll. The only consistent from the start has been Bowie State And that is who comes in, of course, at number 1 in our poll. This week, number 2 is Miles College. I want to say Miles moved up. I believe they were number 3 last week as Fort Valley State had debuted at number 2. And so Miles moves up to number 2. Big game for them upcoming this weekend against Tuskegee, or traveling to Tuskegee. Number 3, making their debut into the polls, the unofficial SIAC East champions, unbeaten Savannah State, unbeaten in the SIAC, I should say. Savannah State Tigers come in at number 3. What an amazing job Coach Sean Quinn has done with those guys. The transition from Division I down to Division II has been a success. They were picked to finish last in the conference, and that could have been for any number of reasons. But they have proven to be very formidable this year. They've pretty much claimed the state of Georgia. They've beaten Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, Fort Valley State, and Albany State. Pretty much everybody in the state of Georgia. Is there anybody else in the state of Georgia from the SIAC that they didn't beat?
No, they beat the 4 Georgia schools. They beat and if you want to count another victory in the state of Georgia, they beat Benedict in the state of Georgia in Augusta. They've beaten 5 SIAC opponents in the state of Georgia, and now they go down and play their cousins, who actually is the closest team to them geographically when they travel down to Jacksonville, Florida this Saturday and play Edward Waters, which is only a 75-minute drive straight down I-95, which is a game that you and I will be on this particular Saturday, Brian.
Yeah, most definitely. We'll be there covering that game. And, Savannah State, man, what a story they have been. Probably the story, one of the, if you had to mark down the 3 or 4 best stories of this season, or I should say 3 or 5 best stories, that's usually how people do stuff like that, they're easily in that conversation. Might be the best story. Savannah State had not had a winning season since 1998. Right.
Since they left
Division II last millennia. That's the last time they had a winning record. So props to them. Number 4 in our poll, Langston Lions. Langston still hanging around. They won't go away. They are just that team that keeps finding ways to win. And our pollsters like the Lions, and they continue to hang on and stay in our polls. I'm not sure that they have a chance at making the NAIA playoffs this year. I don't believe they have a chance at winning the Sooner Athletic Conference after having lost to Ottawa of Arizona a couple of weeks ago. Number 5, debuting in our poll, Virginia State Trojans. Number 5, they come in, obviously helped by the fact that they are ranked number 7 in the super regional rankings. And Virginia State has won, really, if you look at them, they've won 8 of their last 9 games. I mean, look, let's keep it real. The only team they've lost to in that stretch, Bowie State. They've beaten everybody else. And then, of course, that sets up, 2 teams that have only 1 loss in conference. They both lost to Bowie State. And both teams are 8-2 or 7-2 coming into this contest. And so it's a big matchup there. But congratulations to Virginia State coming in. Let's see whether they can stay in the poll or whether someone new will enter in for this upcoming weekend. All right, moving over, AD. First off, real quick before we move over, any thoughts about the under D1 5 teams that made our poll?
The only thing that was tough for me as I was doing, as I was submitting my votes, there are 2 good teams that are sitting on the outside of this poll, which shows you how much parity there is in our Division II polls. Those 2 teams being Virginia Union and Albany State. So you got 7 8 good teams for 5 spots. So it was like trying to get a square peg in a round hole, trying to figure out those 5 teams, Brian. That's how it was for me personally. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and you think about all the teams who have been in our top 5 this year. Obviously, we've had West Virginia State in our poll. We've had Fort Valley State in our poll. You just mentioned Albany State. They've been in our poll.
I think even Fayetteville snuck in there one week.
Fayetteville State snuck in there one time. I mean, that's 4 right there. I don't think Virginia Union has been in, and I'm trying to think.
Virginia. I think Virginia Union debuted in our poll.
Okay, so there's a 5th team right there. So that's 5 different teams that I can think of. I'm trying to think, is there anyone else that we've missed? That's 5 that, have been in our poll at one point this season. So like you said,
and all 5 of those teams are still competitive.
Exactly. So it really speaks to what we've seen in Division II. It's been a great year for HBCUs in Division II, and I guess hopefully we'll see what happens. It's been one of those years. The fact that Bowie State has gone unbeaten, I mean, that don't let that just wash over you like it's some minor accomplishment. I mean, given everything going on in Division II, they're the unbeaten team.
Question for you, Brian, and this may be a week or two early to start this discussion. How deep does Bowie State have to run in the Division II playoffs for you to seriously consider them for the Black College National Champion, considering you have a sanctioned FAMU team who cannot compete for the Celebration Bowl, and you have 2 flawed teams who are going to be coming out of our FCS, be it whichever team comes out of the FCS conferences and wins the Celebration Bowl are going to be flawed. So how deep would you say Bowie State has in?
I'm going to sort of, when you say flawed, I don't think Alcorn State is flawed. I mean, I think Alcorn State is a very good team. Now, especially if Alcorn State can run the table or run, and advance and win, they will make a heavy argument in the whole discussion. Obviously, if FAMU runs it out and finishes 10-1, even though they won't play in the Celebration, I think they will be heavy favorites by a lot of people, as Black College National Champions. I think there will be people who, if Alcorn State goes to the Celebration Bowl and let's say they finally beat North Carolina A&T, let's just say for argument's sake, North Carolina A&T goes back for a 3rd year, and Alcorn finally beats them, there will be a lot of people that will vote for Alcorn State. So I wouldn't say they're flawed, but back to your original question about Bowie. I think Bowie needs to get to the semifinal, or at least 2 wins. I think they need 2 wins in the playoffs. They need to get, because obviously if they get 2 wins, I don't think they're playing.
They're the regional finals. They would be in
right.
But
is that the point? I don't think that's the point where they would potentially play Valdosta State, though.
At the current seeding, they would play Valdosta State in round 2 if the seeds do not change.
No, they wouldn't.
Yes, because the 2 would play 3 in round 2, and that's where they're sitting at right now. Bowie's at 3.
And
Valdosta is at 2. Lenore-Ryan.
Oh, I thought Valdosta was.
Valdosta had a bye this past week, which cost them in the polls.
Oh my gosh! Jeez Louise. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, I think either way they'd have, so either way you're potentially looking at playing Lenore-Ryan or Valdosta State. I think they need to beat one of those 2 teams. If they beat one of those 2 teams, I think you're looking at co-national champs, and they very well I think they very well. You're looking at co-national champs. I'm telling you now. I don't think there's any I don't think there's anybody that's going to give or not give FAMU a share of the Black College National Championship, whatever poll it is, whatever entity is giving out polls and rankings and national championships. Florida A&M goes unbeaten in FCS football with who they had to beat in their conference, beating a SWAC team in Southern. I think they are, I think they'd be there. I think they get a share of it.
Now, let me throw one more carrot out there to you, Brian.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's assume FAMU loses a game. A&T beats Bethune this week. Bethune beats FAMU, and you know I hate those words coming out of my mouth, but I have to throw it out there. So now everybody in the BAC has a minimum of 2 losses, and then let's say a Southern or whoever wins the West wins the SWAC West winner wins the SWAC championship game and wins the Celebration Bowl. Do you make Bowie?
So
now, how does Bowie need to go in?
One game. I think at that point, Bowie only needs to win 1 game.
Okay.
I think Bowie needs to win 2 if somebody like Florida A&M, Alcorn State is still in the mix. And I'll be honest, yes, Bethune-Cookman lost to Savannah State, or not Savannah State, but South Carolina State. But let's say they beat A&T, beat FAMU, and win the Celebration Bowl. Look, they're right there in the hunt. They're going to be considered right there with everybody else. I mean, that is still an impressive run by Bethune.
It's going to be interesting.
Okay, let's get over to the D1 top 5, and then we're going to take a quick break and then get into our game previews. So the top 5 under Division 1, number 1, Florida A&M for, I believe, the 3rd consecutive week. The Rattlers come in at number 1. They're on a bye this upcoming week. Number 2, Alcorn State. The Braves are back in action this week in a very tough contest where they are traveling to Grambling State. Grambling has won 4 games in a row. Very tough ball game upcoming for them. North Carolina A&T comes in at number 3. They're traveling up to Baltimore, taking on Morgan State. Of course, the Bulldogs got a big win last week against South Carolina State. So that was a big win on the road for them. Number 4, Bethune-Cookman. The Wildcats were on a bye last week. This week, I believe they are taking on Delaware State, if I'm not mistaken, on the road this week against Delaware State. Yep, that is correct. And then number 5, making their debut into our top 5 D1 poll, the Grambling State Tigers. I just mentioned them, number 5, winners of 4 games in a row. After a tough 0-4 start, they have put themselves right in the hunt. And this upcoming Saturday, they've got a game against Alcorn State. And I'm telling you what, it's not inconceivable that, they can't win this game. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we do have a top 5 matchup upcoming. Number 2, Alcorn State traveling to number 5, Grambling State. So your thoughts on the D1 side of things, AD?
Finally, we see somebody new in the Division I FCS poll. I think we've had the same 5 teams, maybe in different orders, but we've had the same 5 teams for 4 consecutive weeks, Brian. I'm happy to see some fresh blood.
Yeah, definitely I am too, So it's good to see Grambling get in there. So, all right, let's do this. Let's go ahead and take a short break. When we come out of the break, we will begin to get into our Week 7 top games, and we'll go through the rundown of those key games, share our predictions and thoughts, and then we'll go on from there. So thanks for sticking in and listening. Hang in there with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after these words.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
The Black College Sports Network is proud to partner with ComputerRatings.com. That's COMPUGHTER ratings.com for the upcoming college football season. ComputerRatings.com delivers rankings, game predictions, and statistics for hundreds of professional and collegiate teams. The key feature of ComputerRatings.com is the Versus Sports Simulator, which allows users to simulate any possible matchup and view the predicted scores along with a side-by-side stats analysis. Improve your odds by signing up for a subscription. Monthly, semi-yearly, and yearly subscriptions are available. For our listeners and viewers, use the promo code BCSN19 and get 15% off of your subscription at checkout. Visit www.computerratings.com. That's COMPUGHTER ratings.com.
Hello and welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew here. I want to remind you to find us on Twitter, find our personal pages. You can find me at DRB365. You can always find AD at BCSN Drew, DREW. And, of course, you can find the Black College Sports Network on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook at MyBCSN1, the number 1. All right, before we get into the top 7 games, a bit of a breaking story that came out Thursday. Today's Thursday, actually, Wednesday night. And I mentioned it briefly if you had a chance to catch the midweek report or the podcast that I did with Mo Carter. HBCU Digest released, they were the first to break this on November 6th, about 7:28 p.m., that Howard University had placed head football coach Ron Prince on administrative leave. He was placed on administrative leave effective immediately, pending the outcome of an internal investigation into charges of verbal abuse and mistreatment of players. And if you recall, those reports were first unearthed. They were first unearthed by HBCU Game Day, as some parents had shared with HBCU Game Day some news, or at least letters, of the allegations. They had sent letters to the president and the athletic director, so on and so forth. And then and I can't remember, AD, did that happen before or after Kalen Newton and a few other players had made the decision to enter the transfer portal? Do you recall?
I think it happened like within the same week. I think Kalen Newton did what he did first. A couple other players followed his lead, and then
that story came out at the next game, after that game or whatever.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
But it was all within like a week and 10-day period when everything came out.
Right. So yeah, at that time, Howard was like obviously they were 1-3 when Newton had made the decision. Actually, it was heading into their week number 5 game against Harvard when no, not Harvard. It was Oh, it doesn't matter. I was trying to remember who it was.
It was Bethune.
Right. I knew it was a
Decided
conference
to
game. It was
transfer.
Bethune. Right. They're about to play Bethune. It was so that happened. So currently Howard is 1-8 overall this season. Pop quiz: can you name the one team that Howard beat this year?
Delaware State.
You asking or telling?
I'm asking.
I don't know. I was hoping you would have a little more confidence. I didn't look. That's shame on me. I was the one
I was
asking.
just guessing.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought whenever you're a teacher, whenever you have a quiz, you should have the answer.
Have the answer
Mr.
exactly.
Educator.
Well, look, Delaware State is winless, so I think it was Delaware State. I'll take Delaware State for 200s, AD. The official statement from Howard says Howard University is committed to completing our internal investigation of the allegations involving concerns about the football program. As a result of our continuing investigation, the university has decided to place head football coach Ron Prince on administrative leave effective immediately. Director of Football Operations Aaron Kelton will serve as the interim coach until further notice. Howard University is committed to ensuring our athletic programs reflect Howard's core mission and values, and to ensuring the well-being and success of all student athletes. So that was the statement there. Your thoughts, AD? Any chance that Ron Prince survives this?
Short answer, Brian, no. What I really find interesting about this, and I know this situation is a little bit different than the previous two. Well, at least we're privy to a little bit more information than the previous two firings this year. But that is the third coach that has been let go, put on leave, fired, whatever official statement you want to put out with that. But that is a high number of coaches this year, Brian. I really find that interesting that our HBCUs have made moves like that during the season.
Right, and you're referring to what happened over at St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, and then at Shawan.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, and obviously we don't. I mean, we know a little bit about what happened at St. Aug, but I don't think we know the whole story of what happened over at Shawan. But I mean,
and usually one of the reasons you usually don't see stuff like this happen is because, unlike what you see, and we'll throw it like you see it at FSU, teams, our schools do not have the money typically to buy out the contracts that they give to these coaches. That's why they have to put up with them or fire them. And what you may not know, a lot of coaches work on 1-year rolling contracts so that they don't have to buy out these contracts of these coaches. So that's why I find it highly unusual for them to let these coaches go during the middle of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Of course, we'll all be paying attention to kind of see where Kalen Newton ends up. It's all speculation. It's all rumors.
Do you think Kalen's going to wind up at another HBCU, or do you think he's going to wind up at a PWI?
Well, the fact that he has 2 years of instant eligibility as a grad transfer, I think he could end up back at an HBCU. I really do. I think he could. And I say that from the standpoint of I don't think his completion percentage was high enough to really, to just scream out to somebody at a PWI that, hey, this is not, I could be wrong, unless there's maybe somebody who previously recruited him might be looking for him, but if I were him, I'd want to stay in the HBCU circuit. I mean, you had 2 great years, won some major accolades within that circuit, and you have a chance to, if you go to the right school, you have a chance to play 2 more years and reclaim sort of that place as one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in all of black college football. So that's my thought. I don't think he does that if he goes, let's just say if he goes to William and Mary where his old coach Mike London is, or I don't know, what school might you be thinking of? I don't know where you think he might go.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out because I despite how great of an athlete he is, I believe if he winds up at a PWI, they're going to ask him to change positions. I do not think he's going to go play quarterback at a PWI.
Well, yeah, and see, there you go. I think that's a good point that you bring up. All right, so AD, you ready to get into some of these games?
Hey, let's go for it, man.
Okay, now first off, have you been keeping track of our homecoming tallies? Are you still up to date on that, or are we kind of passed?
We kind of fell behind.
All right. You fell behind. I wasn't keeping up with it. I was leaning on you for that. I'm just not to throw you under the bus. I'm sorry.
We will have that after this upcoming weekend's game, because there are a couple of the homecomings this weekend. So I'll make it a point to update that for you.
All right, good deal. Well, one of those homecoming games that we are talking about and we're mentioning is in the MEAC, and it's North Carolina Central who's hosting a homecoming, and this time they're hosting Norfolk State. And this one, on the surface, you wouldn't think this game has much meaning, but it actually does for a couple of reasons, and that's because North Carolina Central is still in play for the MEAC. I was looking at the standings. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they still only have 2 losses. And so what that means with 2 conference losses, obviously Florida A&M unbeaten, but you have Bethune, A&T with 1 loss, and right there at 2 is South Carolina State and Central. And so with North Carolina Central's upcoming schedule here, where they have Norfolk State, and then they play South Carolina State, and then the matchup with A&T at the end of the year, if things go a certain way, obviously they have to win this week. They have to win next week. Some other things need to happen. But the Aggie-Eagle matchup at the end of the year could mean something once again, and could mean something in terms of somebody, whether it be A&T or Central. It could mean something and towards the actual Celebration Bowl Conference Championship thing. Norfolk State averaging 28.8 points per game. Central only averaging 21. Defensively, though, Norfolk State giving up 32 points a game, and North Carolina Central just under 24, about 23.6. One of the interesting numbers, when you look at opponents' records and you look at strength of schedule, things of that nature, North Carolina Central's opponents have a record of 33-47, while Norfolk State's opponents thus far have a record of 40-38. Norfolk State, I think, has played a very tough schedule. They're only 3-6 this year. North Carolina Central is 4-5. Norfolk State has played 6 500 or better teams this year. North Carolina Central has only played 4, and they have not beaten any of those 4 teams with a 500 or better record. This is a game that, as I'm kind of just glancing the stats here, it's funny. North Carolina Central seems to be. You might think North Carolina Central is the favorite, but it's actually Norfolk State that comes into this ball game with, at least from our Versus Sports simulator, Norfolk State with an 8-point margin of victory over North Carolina Central. What are your thoughts on this game, AD?
The interesting thing about this is when you look at the numbers, Norfolk State's offense, Norfolk State is number 3 in the conference in scoring offense, Brian. North Carolina Central is number 2 in the conference in total defense, number 3 in the conference in scoring defense, meaning points allowed. So this is actually an interesting matchup because you have a contrast of styles. You have good offense versus good defense. The problem with this game is Norfolk State's defense is one of the bottom defenses in the conference, whereas Central's offense is average. They're smack dab in the middle. They go anywhere from 4 to 6, depending on which offensive category that you look at, Brian. So that's what the difference in this game is going to be. Can Norfolk stop Central? Central's going to get some stops against Norfolk. Can Norfolk stop Central is going to be the question. I'm not 100% sure, Brian. I'm really not 100% sure. And I've seen this Central defense step up a couple of times throughout this season and play good. They haven't necessarily got the offense to play with them, but that defense is going to keep them in the game, Brian. Defense wins championships. Although we're not playing for a championship, good defense will keep you around, just like good pitching will stop good hitting on any day in baseball.
Okay. I tend to side with, well, let's look at North Carolina. Okay, so North Carolina Central with a 28-6 win last week over Howard. Howard, of course, lowly Howard. The week before, North Carolina Central needed a kickoff return for a touchdown with about, under the minute to go to win that game against Delaware State. So they won their last 2, but they were against 2 of the worst teams in the conference. The 2 weeks prior to that, they lose by 14 to Bethune. They lose by a touchdown to Florida A&M. Against better teams, they've really been beaten bad. I got to go with Norfolk State. I think Norfolk State has the stronger, better offensive team. I think Jawan Carter is playing at a level that I think we're going to be talking about Jawan Carter as one of the top quarterbacks in the conference come next season. I mean, he's already statistically one of the better quarterbacks, but if Norfolk State can put together things with the defense, I think we're definitely going to be talking about Norfolk State. I don't know. It's a 4-point spread. Vegas, the bookies seem to think Norfolk State is 4 points better than Central. The sports predictor says 8 points better. I'm going to go with Norfolk State by a touchdown. Who do you like, AD?
I like Central in this particular game. I've already given you the reason. I think Central's defense is going to hold off Norfolk.
All right. Good deal. Let's jump over to another matchup in the FCS, and that's going to be a SWAC matchup between Jackson State and Alabama A&M. And, right now as it stands, Jackson State is coming into this ball game hot. They've won, I believe, 3 games in a row now. And they're actually sitting, if I pull up the standings, I'm going to pull up the conference standings here. Jackson State comes in now at 3-1. Literally one game behind first place Alcorn State. That's what winning 3 games in a row will do for you. While Alabama A&M, they're right in the middle of probably their toughest 5-game stretch. And for just a little reminder, if you guys take a second to go listen to the interview I did with Mo Carter, who covers extensively his news station in Huntsville, Alabama. They cover the Bulldogs, so he knows this firsthand. But this is a team that really has been up and down. They have never lost 2 games in a row, and they've only won 2 games in a row in the middle of the season, but they've never really beaten 2 good opponents. And if you look over the course of these last few weeks, 3 weeks ago they lost to Grambling 23-10. Then they go to the Magic City Classic and beat Alabama State in triple overtime. Then last week they go to Southern and they lose to Southern really late in the ball game with about maybe 30 seconds to go, 50 seconds to go, something like that. But they even had a chance at the very end of the game to possibly win that game. So it's the inconsistency for Alabama A&M is what's frustrating. I mean, they've got a first tier quarterback who I think he along with Felix Harper of Alcorn State are, I think, the 2 front runners for Offensive Player of the Year. I don't know. There may be a dark horse in possibly a guy like maybe Jeremy Hickbottom from Grambling State, but I've got to say Akil Glass is one of those top-tier quarterbacks. They've got a solid running game, Jordan Bentley, some good receivers from Ibrahim, the young man is his name, has really been putting up some good numbers for Alabama A&M. It's just a lot of positives. They should have a strong defense. This is the first year under Granville Eastman in their defense, but it hasn't come together like you would have thought. And that's what worries me for Jackson State, or as they play Jackson State, who is coming in with, the quarterback situation at Jackson State has been all over the place this year. I mean, there have been games where they played 3 guys. There are games when they played 1 guy. They're back to, it seems like they're running 2 different quarterbacks now. Last week, they beat, who they beat last week? AD, Arkansas Pine Bluff, I think it was. Yeah, they beat Arkansas. They beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, and last week it was Jalen Jones, the freshman quarterback, who much heralded Florida Gators transfer. He actually had 2 touchdown passes and 1 rushing touchdown, and a real interesting game here. Jackson State traveling to Alabama A&M. What are your thoughts on this ball game, AD?
When you look at just the conference-only statistics, Brian, Alabama A&M's defense is last in the conference in rushing. Alabama A&M, when you look at the defensive stats, just take a conference stats only, A&M's defense is either last or second to last in every major statistical category in SWAC-only games. Jackson State is average. Does average beat bad is the question. And can that home crowd in Huntsville, Alabama, motivate these young men enough where they play above their heads? Jackson State controls their own destiny. I told you this 3 weeks ago, Brian, that Jackson State was going to win out and was going to set up that last game of the year versus Alcorn, where they be playing for the SWAC East Championship. I will not renege on that prediction, Brian.
Yeah, I'll give you credit for that. You did call that. You did call that. So I'm just going to mark you down because it sounds like you're going with Jackson State. Sounds like you're keeping with your prediction here of Jackson State. Am I correct in that statement?
100%, Brian.
All right. Alabama A&M is a 6-point home favorite, according to the folks who set the Vegas lines. Our Versus Sports Simulator, our friends at ComputerRatings.com, they actually see Alabama A&M winning this game by 3 points at home, a game that actually goes well into the high 30s. So, if you're one of those people that are thinking about maybe an over-under situation, which, if I'm not mistaken, I was just looking for it because I had it pulled up here. The over-under is 64.5. So, there's a high expectation that a lot of points will be scored in this one, and so I'm gonna go with Alabama A&M at home. They've got a Hall of Fame weekend coming up. One of the things that Mo Carter had sort of tagged us in, AD, was just kind of talking about some of the big names, former players coming in. My guy from the Indianapolis Colts, former Alabama A&M Bulldog, Robert Mathis, and future Pro Football Hall of Famer, Robert Mathis. He will actually be in the house. There's going to be a lot of guys talking to the young men, the young Bulldogs of Alabama A&M. I think there's going to be a lot of inspiration in the locker room just in this entire weekend for the Bulldogs, and I think it's going to be enough to get them over. But I do like Jackson State to cover, but I like Alabama A&M to get the win. How's that sound, AD?
Sounds like you're going to be wrong.
Wow, that's vicious, man. All right, let's do this. Let's take a break, because coming up, we're getting into all Division II football. We've got the breakdown coming up for the CIAA and the SIAC. We're going to tell you our thoughts on who's going to win these big contests this weekend, games that will affect not only the conference championship selections, or I guess you could say the conference championship teams, but they will have an effect on the Division II playoff, because there's all of these games matter at this point in the stretch. So be prepared to come back and hang in there with us. We'll be back right after these words. You're listening and watching to the BCSN SportsWrap on the Black College Sports Network.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
I've been waiting for you've been through, we have a warm welcome waiting for you at more than 325 hotels around the world. Book today at DoubleTree.com. DoubleTree by Hilton, where the little things mean everything.
Hello and welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. I'm Brian Fulford, joined as always by my co-host, my partner, my sidekick, my co-pilot. You know, he drives sometimes, and I'll just ride in the back and chill. That's AD Drew, and AD. We tell the people where they can find you on Twitter and such.
BCSN Drew. BCSN DREW.
And of course, you can find me at DRB365. Make sure to go to our join and like. I guess that's what I should say. For our Facebook pages, our BCSN Sports Wrap and our Black College Sports Network pages. www.mybcsn.net is the web page of record for us, and we will be broadcasting this weekend. Matter of fact, we've got a 2-day action of broadcast. We're doing a basketball doubleheader at Edward Waters College, and tell the people a little bit about who we're broadcasting on Friday night, AD.
We have both the men's and the women's matchup, two NAIA HBCU teams, as Edward Waters hosts Florida Memorial in both men's and women's action. The women's action will tip off at 6 p.m., followed by the men's game at 8 p.m. And then we'll relax at the hotel, and then we'll get up Saturday morning, get ready for that 3 o'clock kickoff versus Savannah State University, the unofficial SIAC East champs, at 3 p.m.
All right, so a big day, a busy day for us. Looking forward to it. Shout out to Joshua Jackson and the good people over at Edward Waters College, and so that's where we will be.
And,
all right.
And one other thing about the basketball game.
For sure.
The women are 4-0 on the young season, and the men are 0-2 on the young season. So we'll see if the women can remain undefeated and see if the men can pick up their first victory on the young season.
Okay. Well said. All right. So we're going over to the SIAC now, and I was just writing something down here. I want to make sure I get this right. Okay, so here's the scenarios in the SIAC. We have 2 contests which will decide the championship. We have the SIAC East featuring Fort Valley State versus Albany State, playing in the 30th annual Fountain City Classic. That game is played in Columbus, Georgia. That game is going to kick off at 2 p.m. The winner will represent the East, and Savannah State cannot represent the East as the only unbeaten team on that side. One of these 2 teams will have to take their place. Both teams have lost to Savannah State. Over on the west side, we've got Tuskegee at home, homecoming, taking on the Miles Golden Bears coming into town. And AD, you said this so eloquently in the wrap-up show, in the Week 10 wrap-up show, that I'm going to let you do it again and see if you could do it just as well, that this game and just this situation is strangely familiar. In fact, 1 year ago, we were in the same spot, but the roles were reversed. Let the people know what I'm talking about.
See, I told you not to ask me to do that twice, Brian.
Wait a minute, I should.
It's just like asking me to make that buzzer beater again so she could take a picture of me shooting the ball this time, and I've never made a half-court shot in my life. But no, seriously though, last year Tuskegee was in control of the SIAC West before they went on a streak, on a short losing streak. They lost the matchup against Central State. If they would have won the game against Central State last year, the game against Miles did not matter. They lost to Central State. They had to beat Miles. Miles came in, they went 2 miles on the road and were not able to get the victory. Miles, who had reeled off 5 victories in a row at that point in time, that was their 5th victory in a row, went in to the SIAC championship game as a 500 team, and then they ultimately won the SIAC championship game, which screwed the SIAC out of a potential playoff berth. Now, let's flip to 2019. Miles is at Central State. All Miles has to do is beat Central State, and they've wrapped up the SIAC West. Miles loses to Central State, opens the door for Tuskegee. Miles has to get on the road and travel to Tuskegee. Remember last year, Tuskegee had to travel to Miles.
Right.
So a team that's the only difference is Tuskegee is 1 game better than Miles was at that point in time. Tuskegee is 5-4. Last year, Miles was 4-5. Other than that, the scenarios are exactly the same, except the teams are flipped. The team that was in control of their own destiny has to go on the road and go into the arch rival's house and win in order to represent the SIAC. The team with the better record is on its heels going into this game, just like they were last year, Brian.
All
Did
right,
I do a good job?
Yes, that was great. Great job. Okay, so let's start with that game, since that's the one you just finished with. We're going to start with Miles and Tuskegee. So last year, the Golden Bears won that game 31-27. I'm going to just take a quick glance at if it pulls up quickly here. I don't think it will. I was going to take so a quick peek at the box score from last year. This was obviously, remember, Miles under 500 in this contest. So Tuskegee had a 17-7 halftime lead before Miles would actually go 14 points in the third quarter and cut the deficit to 24-21 at the end of the third quarter. And then Jackson Spraden kicked a field goal with 13:52 in the fourth quarter to cut the deficit, or to tie the ball game at 24. Tuskegee answered at the 5:23 mark when Arnez Huskick kicked a 37-yard field goal, which put Tuskegee up 27-24. And then in the final minute of the ball game, with 57 seconds left, it was Leonard Tyree from Daniel Smith, 27 yards. Miles wins 31-27. Oh, the drama, AD. Oh, the drama of that game as it turned out. And I mean, that. What would you say? That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good summation of that game, wouldn't you say, AD?
Yeah, you're correct with that, Brian.
Okay, so over the last 9 times that these teams have played, though, Tuskegee has owned this series. They've won 6 of the last 9 in these matchups. Miles has not won 2 games in a row. In fact, prior to that win, Tuskegee had won in 2017 and 2016. They'd beaten Miles. Miles did happen to win in 2015 in Tuskegee, so that's the last time that Miles actually went to Tuskegee and got a win. It was a 26-23 win back in 2015. They also won in 2013, 41-36 at Tuskegee. So, they've recent years under Coach Reginald Ruffin, they have had some success beating Tuskegee. And so that's where we sit. I mean, we obviously AD has broken down this game I should say AD has broken down the scenarios as it relates to Miles. Let me ask this. You've mentioned that Miles does not, in your opinion, you would say probably the odds of Miles making it to the playoffs, you probably would you put it at under 10%, under 20? Where would you put it percentage-wise, AD?
I'm just going to say they need a lot of breaks. I would say maybe 25% chance.
Okay, so
they just got to get the right breaks.
Is there any break or any scenario? Let's say Tuskegee wins this. Tuskegee would then have won 6 games in a row. They come into this ball game with a 5-game win streak. Any scenario that Tuskegee, with a win this week, a potential win the following week, any chance Tuskegee has a shot at getting into the playoffs?
No, there are too many good teams ahead of them in the regional rankings where Tuskegee won't, even at 7-4, or they would be 7-4 at that point in time. We would not get in, and Tuskegee had some bad losses early in the year. They were blown out by West Alabama. They were blown out by Winston-Salem State. So they've had 2 bad losses to teams that are not even considered in the rankings right now.
Okay. One of the things that has played against Miles, and you brought this up, their strength of schedule, opponents' records by Miles is 28-51, opponent record for Tuskegee is 34-45. Miles has they're actually number 1 in total offense, averaging 384.1 yards per game. They are number 2 in scoring offense, averaging 32.2 points a game. When you look at defensively, what Tuskegee does well, they're only 20.1 points a game allowed. Actually, they've allowed more points than they scored this year, which I think is one of those stats that is not a good sign. But remember, there was a stretch where Tuskegee had held 3 consecutive opponents to 10 points. So, I think that kind of brought the numbers down. Scoring defense, Tuskegee only giving up third best in the SIAC. In terms of total defense, it's third best behind, guess who? Miles College at number 2. Is there a stat or two or anything that you look at in this contest, AD, that will sway you from picking Tuskegee? I'm just going to keep it real. Is there anything here that'll sway you from picking Tuskegee?
Miles has not beaten an opponent over 500 this year. They have not played an opponent over 500 this year, Brian. Number 1, they have not played an opponent who.
I'm looking at from
at the time of the game, they have not played an opponent who was over 500 until this weekend.
Okay, but at the time of the game, opponents overall, they are 2-1 against plus 500 teams. So maybe that's the stats that I'm looking at are basically season to date. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I won't interrupt. Sorry.
Yeah. They haven't played an opponent. And then number 2, Tuskegee is 3-1 on the year in home games. Tuskegee usually wins about 80% of their day games, and their day home games they're about running at an 80% clip over the past 4 or 5 years, Brian.
I can't believe you're still using that stat. I love the fact that you continue to go to the daytime stat like they're the Chicago Cubs of 1985 or something.
Well, Brian.
They don't have lights. They don't play any night games. Nobody in the SIAC, or I won't say nobody, but they don't have any lights at the stadium.
Everybody else plays night games, Brian. Tuskegee plays day games. Now, in September, that's to their advantage. That's a great advantage, the heat and the humidity in Tuskegee, Alabama, playing those day games. So, but what the bigger advantage to it is you have a routine because when you're at home, you're gonna play at 1:00. Unlike some teams, you're gonna play at 1:00 this Saturday, you're gonna play at 3:00 this Saturday, you're gonna play at 6:00 this Saturday. So you have a rhythm, you have a routine when you are at home. So I love Coach Ruffin. I love him like a brother, but I love Coach Slater like a father. So I'm going with my father over my brother.
Well said. What's the one thing that you think Tuskegee does really well?
Tuskegee, especially in this game, has the ability to shorten the game. Coach Slater is no dummy. He knows he needs to shorten that game. He will go to the run game against teams that have high-powered offenses, such as Miles is having this year, and will use the RPO, especially the R of the RPO, a lot more often than he does against other teams. You won't see a lot of home run plays by design by Tuskegee. Now, if you see a 60, 70-yard run for a touchdown, it's going to be because of a missed tackle or a missed assignment. They're not going to go over the top and try to get that 60 or 70-yard play against Miles. They want to eat clock, keep Miles' offense off the field, and their already top-rated defense becomes better when they have to play on the field fewer downs.
I'm glad you said that because do you know who the top rushing defense is in the SIAC by an average of almost 30 yards per game? Any idea?
That would probably be Miles, and that would probably be Miles because when you're usually up on opponents big because they're averaging over 40 points a game, most teams cannot run the ball, Brian, because they're having to throw the ball to try to get back into the game. Since you have the stats in front of you, what did they do against a good rushing team such as a Kentucky State? What did they do against a Central State, another team that runs the ball heavily? Too bad they didn't play Savannah State. I would have loved to have seen that defense against Savannah State. But those are the type of things you need to look at. Teams that can lean more towards running the ball, Brian. Those are the different statistics that we must look at. I do not think that Miles' defense is going to be capable of slowing the Tuskegee running game down enough so that it will become a factor.
Okay, AD, so my prediction here, well, let me first give you, as I look at the Versus Sports Simulator, they predict a very close ball game. And these games, obviously you pointed them out. They haven't always been close. Last year, I take that back. It was only 2 years ago. 2 years ago was the blowout. The last three of the last 4 games have all been decided by 4 or less points. So you had 4 points last year. Of course, 2 years ago it was by 30. But the years before that, it was 3 and 3. So, relatively speaking, 3 of the last 4 games have been relatively close. Sports Simulator sees a close game this year. Actually, a 2-point ball game is what they see this year. And they actually see it in favor of Miles. And, I have been on the Miles bandwagon since the beginning of the year. That was the team that I think, if I recall, my prediction, I think, was a rematch of Miles and Albany State. And with, I think, the caveat, I thought that Savannah State would be the dark horse team, and it looks like I might have been right about that, even though they can't participate in the playoffs. So I have to stick with what I said at the beginning of the year, and that it's Miles winning this ball game, but I think they win it by at least a field goal score. But I will say, in order for them, I think, to beat them, I think Ahmad Duramus has to have the kind of passing game that he had that we saw on Friday night, where he connected with his receivers in some big-time situations. But I think they're going to have to pass and beat Miles. I think if they try to run and they try to slow the game down, kind of as you indicated that they might, I think they will lose this ball game. I mean, obviously the X factor is always a turnover or two could pop up and change the momentum. But with that aside, if it plays out mistake-free football, I think Miles' run defense will be the deciding factor, and then it'll fall on the heels of Ahmad Duramus or Jamarcus Ezel, because obviously both of them will get some action, and so we'll see what happens. But I'm going with Miles. I know you're going with Tuskegee. All right, so let's move over to the Fountain City Classic, the 30th anniversary of this classic, played in Columbus, Georgia. The winner of this game between Fort Valley State and Albany State will decide the SIAC East winner. Now, what's interesting about this game for Fort Valley State, they're without their quarterback, Slade Jarman. We know what Slade Jarman means to Fort Valley State. Now, they were able to get some quality production from their backup quarterback from last week. I did want to mention, Slade Jarman, who did get injured, a lower leg injury, will probably finish as the league leader in passing average per game, 262.4, with 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So that's where he will end. I was trying to see. I want to make sure I had the quarterback, the young man's name from last week, who passed for Fort Valley. But Fort Valley has the unenviable task of trying to rebound from a game where they were just brutally manhandled by Savannah State on the road. I mean, 54-23, and I mean those 23 points came. At least a lot of them came very late. At least 2 of those scores came late in the ball game. But I mean, Savannah State just put hands on them, and I mean it was an impressive showing for them. And the question then becomes, okay, can Fort Valley State rebound? Albany State, I believe, has, and I just had a little bit of the history of this series pulled up. Last year, Albany State won this game 40-6. Albany State has won 6 of the last 8 games. They've won the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've won 5 of the last 6 games in this series. So, I mean, all indications are that this should be Albany State's game, and I don't know how Fort Valley State wins this game, short of Albany State making the kind of errors that anybody who watches football can throw a cliche out and say happens, but I think some type of turnover mistake has to happen in order for, and I mean on multiple times, possessions for Fort Valley to win this game. What are your thoughts on this game, AD?
I totally agree with you, Brian. Albany State basically has to come in here and lay an egg for Fort Valley to even have a chance. I mean, we've seen games without Slade Jarman where Fort Valley can't even, for lack of a better word, get out of their own way. And I think, maybe once again that may be the case. But the one thing the two things that can help Fort Valley: turnovers, penalties, and Albany State needs to make sure they focus on the special teams. They need to. If Albany State just plays average to good in all three phases of the game, they will win this game. But if they let special teams, a block kick or a big kick return, something along those lines is going to have to be the break that Fort Valley needs to stay in this game. The other thing is Albany State is a run-heavy team. If Albany State's run game does not go, you're going to be able to keep Fort Valley's going to be able to keep themselves around. If Fort Valley's in this game in the fourth quarter, especially in a rival game, anything can go, Brian.
All right, so who's your prediction in this contest, AD?
No doubt I'm going to go with the Golden Rams of Albany State University in this particular game.
Okay, Albany State is a 7.5-point favorite. This game kicks off. Both of these games kick off at 2 p.m. I believe the Fort Valley Albany State will be on television via ESPN3. I have not seen whether there'll be any coverage of the Miles Tuskegee game. Maybe it will be on the TuskegeeGoldenTigers.com webpage, as I have seen other games, home games for Tuskegee on that network. But the Versus Simulator seems to think it'll be an 8-point victory for Albany State over Fort Valley. I tend to agree. I think at least 10. We're both on the side of Albany State, sounds like, AD. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that is our SIAC. We both predict Albany State. AD thinks Tuskegee wins. I think Miles wins in the other matchup that will decide the SIAC West. All right, moving over to the CIAA. And we're going to start with, okay, so here's the scenarios. Obviously, we mentioned earlier the North is decided. Here's how the South works out. You have 2 ball games that are left. You have Fayetteville State currently in first place, traveling to Winston-Salem State. But that's at 2 p.m. But an hour before that at 1 p.m., Shaw is hosting St. Augustine. And a Shaw win combined with a Fayetteville State loss, and Shaw is the team that advances to the CIAA championship game. If both teams win or if both teams loses, then Fayetteville State remains in first place and they will advance. Did I get that correct, AD?
Yes, you are correct. Same result. If both of them have the same result, it's Fayetteville. If there's a split decision, as they say, that split decision will go to Shaw.
Okay. So let's first talk about the Fayetteville State Winston-Salem State game, because I think that's the most intriguing game for a couple of factors. First off, you've got last year. I mean, last year, I don't know what you call last year, but
laying it in is what I call it.
Yeah, Winston-Salem State beat Fayetteville 51-21 last year. I repeat, they beat them 51-21, and that was a game in which the Southern Division had already been clinched. So really, Fayetteville wasn't playing but for pride, and Winston-Salem just put it on them. And then, of course, they had to turn around and then go to the CIAA championship, and they lost to Amir Hall and Bowie that year. But what's really sort of playing against things here for the Broncos is that they have lost, well, I should say, better way of saying it, Winston-Salem has won 15 of the last 21 games. I mean, in this, there's a streak that dates back to, in this decade alone, they have won 8 of the last 9 games. Overall, Winston-Salem leads the series 25-1, and this dates all the way back to 1994. The last time Fayetteville State won in this series was in 2017, where they won 23-22, and that game was at Winston-Salem State 2 years ago. I tell you, AD, it's going to be tough picking against the trend. It's going to be tough picking against history. Did the Fayetteville State loss to St. Augustine's a couple of weeks ago, did that sour, you, me, anybody that sour anyone on Fayetteville State? What do you see from this matchup, AD? What are your thoughts?
I see a couple of teams with desperation. Number one, Fayetteville State is probably not going to let what happened to them last year happen to them again this year. They're going to be motivated. They're going to be ready for this game. Fayetteville State has more than the CIAA playoffs the CIAA championship game to play for. They are playing for a potential playoff berth. A loss by Albany State out of the SIAC and a couple of other things going right opens the door for a Fayetteville State to sneak in to the playoffs, especially if they beat Bowie State in the in the CIAA championship game, Brian. So they have a lot to play for.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Fayetteville, we sleep. Fayetteville's record right now, is 7-2. And, they are playing, there's a lot to play for here, and they still have an outside shot, of getting to the playoffs. They are predicted by our Versus Sports Simulator to win this contest by 6 points. But I'll tell you, AD, I don't know, man. I'm a big fan of trends. And when you show me these kind of trends, I get a little itchy, and I'm moving around right now because I can't sit still, and I can't pick Fayetteville State right now. I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to roll with Winston-Salem on this one, and it'll be a close game. It might be something like a 21-20 kind of game, or a 23-21 ball game, but somehow I think Winston-Salem pulls this off. Your thoughts, your prediction?
I saw Winston-Salem come into and face another team that's right now on the outside looking in earlier this year when Winston-Salem went into Tuskegee. One thing that you have not brought up, Brian, and we brought this up once upon a time, Winston-Salem State is one of the winningest programs in this decade, Brian. I believe they are the number 2 winningest program in the decade of the teams. So that means something. That means this team is a team that can get it done. Will they get it done is the question of the day, Brian.
Okay.
I don't think so, Brian. I think they will have an inspired game, but I think Fayetteville State will be inspired enough and not fall into that trap to lose 2 years in a row in a game. Fayetteville has too much to play for. It cost them last year. It cost them a potential playoff berth last year. It's not going to happen to them again, Brian.
Okay, strong words. So it sounds like we're on opposite sides here. I'm picking Winston-Salem. You're picking Fayetteville State. And so now, based on who we picked, the other game in the Southern Division, the game that matters, is Shaw taking on St. Augustine. And let me get my notes there on that one. Apologize. So the Shaw Bears come into this ball game with an actual shot, and by virtue of last week's win, they shut out Winston-Salem on the road for their homecoming. They shut them out 21-0, I think was the final score. So that was a big win for Shaw. Shaw is only 5-4 overall. 2-7 overall is St. Aug's. I mean, Shaw has had one of those interesting years. I mean, they've had a block punt, which resulted in them having to kick a field goal, which cost them eventually a win. I think there may have been one other game. Wasn't there another game where – no, I might be thinking of – I'm thinking of something else, somebody else. So, I don't see Shaw losing this ball game. You know, the prediction, I mean, Shaw is averaging 28.4 points a game. St. Aug is giving up 35.4. I mean, think about that. Opponent's record, I thought this was kind of interesting, AD. Opponent's records. Shaw, their opponent's records are 43-37. And, you know, St. Aug's opponent's records are 50-31. I mean, that's saying something. 50-31. So, look, I'm going with Shaw, and I think based on the scenarios, if it plays out the way I called it, Shaw will end up winning the CIAA South. What are your thoughts on this contest, and who ends up coming out of the South?
Fayetteville comes out of the South. Fayetteville comes out and Fayetteville blows out Winston-Salem. Excuse me, not Winston-Salem. I just had a brain fart, Brian.
Yeah, Shaw over St. Aug is the game, and then Fayetteville.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did have it right. Yeah, Fayetteville blows out Winston-Salem. Doesn't even have to worry about the scoreboard watching, Brian.
Okay, yeah, because St. Aug and Shaw is a 1 p.m. kickoff, so there will be a little bit of scoreboard watching, at least, you know, for the better part of maybe 2 quarters in the second and third quarter, and then I guess by then you'll know. So it'll be interesting. Just the way this series has flown, and then to see who will end up coming out on top. So there you go. That's how we predict the CIAA South. Now, the North is already decided, but the key matchup for the North, and this is a key matchup in the state of Virginia, is the Virginia State Trojans, the Virginia Union Panthers. The winner of this ball game, put it like this, I'll say it like this, without a doubt, the loser of this ball game, I mean, it's already neither team has a shot at going to the conference championship, but the loser of this game is basically eliminated from the playoff scenario. Season over. Thanks for playing. We love you. God bless.
God bless you.
And
good night.
Good night now. Is there a stat or two? You talked to Dr. Parker, and you're looking at the analysis. Is there a stat or two that sort of stands out to you as you think about these two teams?
Brian, I'm going to be honest with you. I can break down these stats all day long. You know, traditionally, Virginia State has been a run-heavy team. Virginia Union has been a run-heavy team at different points in time. Both teams are passing the ball more this year than they have in the past. But this is Union versus State, Brian. You could throw all that crap out the window. When you couple the fact that these two teams are essentially in a elimination game, this is amazing, Brian. This is amazing, and this is what you play for. You know, it's going to be a cool afternoon in Petersburg, Virginia, but it will be a packed crowd, Brian, and like I say, throw everything this weekend. Actually, with every game that we've talked about, Tuskegee Miles, Fort Valley, Albany State, Winston-Salem, Fayetteville State. Throw all of the statistics out of the window. Throw them in the garbage, put them away. These are rival games, Brian. Anything can happen in a rival game, and what it comes down to in a rival game is execution and controlling your emotions. Look at the team who has the fewest penalties, and I guarantee you in all four of those games that I just mentioned, that will be the team that wins.
Well, of course, last year Union won this contest 46-19. Over the last decade, Virginia State has, the record is 6-4. So, it's practically been a 500 series over the last decade. The last two times that this game has been played at Virginia State, they've been close ball games. Virginia State won by 1 point in let me double check. I think it's 2017. And then in 2015, they actually won that one 28-27. So we have had these very close games of late. Our Versus Sports Simulator actually predicts Virginia State with a 4-point victory over Virginia Union. I don't know. Does that shock you? First off, AD.
No, it really doesn't shock me that the simulator has them, ahead of them. And a lot of that has to do with Virginia State has played a slightly tougher schedule than Union. So when you factor that into the computer rankings, they should be favored in this game. State should be favored.
All right. Yep, they should be, and they are. Ooh, I don't know where to go with this one, AD. I tend to think if I had a coin, I'd flip a coin on this one, but I'm going to go with the simulator, and I'm going to say Virginia State wins this by a field goal or so. So I'm going Virginia State over Union. Who do you love?
I've talked to Dr. Parker a couple of times this year.
Right.
Really like the way that he's turning that program around. He went out with the intention of toughening up his schedule to get his guys tougher for situations such as this one right here. Tobias Taylor, they're going to get a heavy dose of Tobias Taylor. So I'm just thinking that Union is they're going to go back to old school. They're going to go back to running the ball like they used to. And they're going to find a way to pull this game out. And Brian, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think this game is going to be as close as everybody is thinking. What I mean by that is I'm thinking it's going to be by more than a touchdown, Brian.
Okay. Wow. So you're going with who by more than a touchdown? I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Union by more than a touchdown. So we are on opposite sides of the coin in this game, my friend. I've got Virginia State in a close game, and you got Union in a blowout, so to speak. I guess is that considered a blowout? No, blowout. Blowout is 20 plus.
Okay.
Union. I would say Union.
A strong win. A decisive victory.
Decisive win. Yes.
There you go. All right, so just to recap our games, going all the way back to the first game we talked about, Norfolk State at North Carolina Central. Central is a 4-point home underdog. I'm going with Norfolk State. AD is going with Central, North Carolina Central. Moving over to the SWAC, a 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff, Alcorn State at Grambling. AD, I didn't talk about. Did we even talk about that one?
We talked about the A&M Jackson State game. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, we just glossed right. I'm sorry.
Do we want to talk about it? We just want to give a score on it.
I did a poor job of quarterbacking that one. Sorry about that. Big SWAC West contest. Since we're running late on time, We'll make sure to hit this up as one of the first games we talk about on the wrap-up show. But how do you see what's your maybe prediction or your thought on this one?
Alcorn's going to continue to roll through the roll through the SWAC. I don't think anybody's going to stop there until they get to the championship round, Brian. I'm going with Alcorn's. Short story.
You're going with Alcorn. Yeah, I am too. Grambling is a 4.5-point home underdog. The Versus Sports Simulator actually sees a 26-21 contest between Alcorn State and Grambling. So it'll be right there on the line. I do think this is the reason why this is a good matchup, just to say this one thing. You've got Alcorn State, who's coming into the game with a 5-game winning streak, their longest of the season. You've got Grambling coming into the game with a 4-game winning streak after losing 4 games in a row. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a great contest, interdivisional matchup. I gotta stick with the team that I've been riding, and that's Alcorn State. I think Grambling, they are strong. They're actually probably the SWAC's top run defense or running offense, and I think holding the run or just their defense in general is what Alcorn State does so well. So I'll go with Alcorn State. So that's a 3 p.m. kickoff. The 2 p.m. contest, and these are in Eastern times. That is Jackson State at Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M a 6-point home favorite. I'm going with Alabama A&M. I think Jackson State covers the 6, but A&M wins the ball game. You're going with Jackson State in the outright upset on the money line. Ching. Moving over to the SIAC to recap, Fort Valley State at Albany State. Albany State a 7.5-point favorite. We're both taking Albany State to win that game. That will decide the SIAC East. Also at 2 p.m. to decide the SIAC West, Miles at Tuskegee. And we're split on that one. Of course, we are. AD is taking Tuskegee. I'm taking Miles. So we'll see what happens on that one. Moving to the SIAC, we both like Shaw to beat St. Augustine. And then we're split, though, on what happens at 2 p.m. between Fayetteville State and Winston-Salem. AD is taking Winston-Salem State, which would advance them as the winners of the South. I'm actually taking Winston-Salem based on the trends of this series, which then would move Shaw into their place for the CIAA championship game. Well, the winner will actually, whoever comes out will end up playing Bowie State. And then in the battle of, what do they call this? What do they call this? Virginia State versus?
I've been trying to find a nickname for it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Shameful. Somebody tell us. Somebody out there, send us a tweet if you know, at DRB365 or at BCSN Drew. Let us know what this series. AD is going with Virginia Union in a convincing victory. I will go with Virginia State in the close 3-point win. All right, AD. Well, right. I think that will do it. Did we miss anything? Go ahead. What did we miss for week number 11?
What quarter will Bowie State pull their starters out of the game, Brian, against Elizabeth City State?
Well, last week they pulled the starters somewhere in the middle of the third quarter because at one point they were up 65 to 6 at one point, and they didn't score again. And so that was somewhere in the third quarter. So I see a similar, thing. I think they'll probably score over 50 again. And, the question I think they'll rest the starters in the second half, and because obviously they got to get ready to play a game the following week. So I'm gonna just go halftime. I don't even think starters see the field in the second half. How about that?
All right. So I think we've covered everything else except make sure people tune in to our broadcast tomorrow night of Edward Waters versus Florida. Friday night, yes, that's tomorrow night. We're recording on a Thursday. It just depends on when people actually listen to this. I apologize about that. Friday night, November the 8th, 6 p.m. versus Edward Waters versus Florida Memorial. Women's game begins at 6 p.m. Men's game will begin at 8 p.m. right here on the Black College Sports Network. And then Saturday afternoon, we will have Edward Waters versus Savannah State. What are we going to call that? Battle of 95 South, Brian, or what? We've got to come up with a creative nickname for that series right there.
Oh, I don't know. Something like the I-95 battle or the I-95
Atlantic Beach battle or something like that.
Both schools are Tigers, so the I-95 the I-95 Crouching Tiger battle. I don't know, whatever. There's no hidden dragon, so we just say Crouching Tiger. I don't know.
And they're one of the few Tigers. Actually, we've got two Tigers without a color in front of their name, Brian.
Oh, I know Joshua Jackson will be pleased about that. So there's no. I know everyone at EWC who has to
blue, red,
call
golden,
the game.
Yellow, green, whatever.
No colors. It'll just be Tigers v. Tigers.
Yes.
Tiger style. All right.
There you go.
There we go. All right, AD. That's going to wrap it up for this pod. That's our Week 11. That's a wrap. Week 11 in the books. Get ready to enjoy the games upcoming. Again, final plugs for the Black College Sports Network, www.mybcsn.net. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook using @mybcsn1, the number 1. And, of course, you can find AD at BCSN Drew, DREW. You can find me at DRB365. That's going to do it. I think we've covered a lot, AD. Good job today.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Just trying to follow your lead.
Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate you. All right, folks, that'll be it. Thanks for watching. Please tell 2 friends about our show, and we'll see you out there in the cyberspace. And please make sure to hit us up, and we hope you'll get a chance to watch our broadcast. For AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. Thanks. Peace out.
It's like a loop machine. Going around town, people trying to get down.
This December 21st, the best in HBCU football will collide in Atlanta at the Celebration Bowl. MEAC versus SWAC. Champion versus champion. Only one team will rise above the rest and claim the coveted Celebration Bowl trophy. Come join the celebration at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this December. For more information, visit thecelebrationbowl.com.
I've been waiting for days to come like this, better than ever before. And now I know there's more.
Wherever you've been, whatever you've been through, we have a warm welcome waiting for you at more than 325 hotels around the world. Book today at DoubleTree.com. DoubleTree by Hilton, where the little things mean everything.
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.